First, I'd like to say that I got a new camera, a new webcam, and I'm working with a microphone. And I'm going to put it up here so you can hear better. And I was really happy to get a new webcam because it was about time. I had a really cheap webcam and it just wasn't doing the job. And this webcam seems to be doing a lot better. But along with getting a new webcam, unfortunately, my video editing software broke. So I had to find a new video editing program to work with because Windows Movie Maker just doesn't work for me anymore. I don't know why, but it just doesn't. But no problems. I came up with a new video editing software, and I have a new webcam and a new microphone, and I'd like to get on with this video about sigils. I wrote some notes here in my notebook because there was a lot of things to cover, and I didn't want to forget anything that I wanted to talk about today. And I don't know if this is going to end up being a two-part video, but if it does, then there's going to be a lot of information to cover. Okay. First of all, I'd like to start talking about what sigils are. A sigil is a symbol that's created by a magician used for a magical purpose. And in the practice of magic, symbols are a type of magical language that magicians use. It's an image that instantly calls to mind all of the things that that symbol represents. For instance, we can take the image of a heart. A heart is universally known as the image of love. So we can look at that symbol and then we can instantly know and feel what that image is supposed to mean. Well, it's the same thing with a magical sigil, except it's a personal type of image, it's a personal type of language that a magician uses. Sigils are used for different things in magic. You could use it for a basic type of spell casting, where you use the sigil within a spell to create a spell, or to even base a spell on a sigil. Or you could also use that sigil to connect with a higher force, or to connect with a god or a demon. And an example of that can be found in the Goetia, where each demon has its own sigil. An example in magic would be, like Peter Carroll describes in his books, the Chaos Peter Carroll. A magical sigil is created out of letters from a sentence, and the sentence describes what the magician wants to create, and all of those letters are put together into one symbol, and that symbol then becomes the spell itself. So the sigil is a very important tool in magic. I frequently use symbols whenever I work with magic. In fact, I can't really remember a spell that I've done recently where I used ritual items where I didn't use the sigil. I think that sigils are different than symbols simply because they're an image that's created by the magician, versus a symbol, which could be a universally known image. Like, for instance, we have the astrological symbols. There's the symbol of Venus and Mars and Moon and Saturn and Jupiter, and those are universally known. People from all different cultures can look at that symbol and know what it means, versus a sigil, which would be a more personal expression created by a magician. So, sigils are part of the alphabet of magic, and even if they aren't universally known, they're still part of the magician's way of expressing themselves. There's many different ways to create a sigil. One of the most controversial ways, I guess, would be to create a sigil out of blood. If you took a piece of paper and you did some bloodletting, and then you created a small, very small sigil with that, that sigil would hold a lot of power because it would have your energy, and it would be your design, and it would be your spell all put into one. A much easier and less painless way to create a sigil is, of course, to use some kind of magical ink or a magical pen and to draw the sigil yourself. Or you could also draw it with charcoal or paint it with paint or any other tool that you feel would help to add to the energy of creating a sigil. I think it's important to give that some type of thought before you make a sigil. A sigil that's drawn with a pencil isn't going to have as much impact as if it were drawn with some type of permanent ink, and that's because a pencil can easily be rubbed off. It's not as permanent as the ink is. So if you can understand that concept, the tools and instruments used in creating sigils are just as important as the creation of the sigil and the sigil itself. Another thing I'd like to discuss is the symbolic meaning behind sigils. And a lot of times a sigil will have a personal symbolic meaning. Just like I talked about earlier, Peter Carroll and Chaos Magic. That's a really quick way to create a sigil, is to have one sentence that describes exactly what you want to create in magic. And then you take the first letters from that sentence, and it's a very brief sentence. You take the first letters from that sentence and you combine all of those letters together to create one sigil. And it's going to look really weird. It's going to look very strange. But what that does is it's like condensing the sentence into one symbol. And it allows you to take that sigil and place it underneath the candle, or burn it in a fire, or keep it in a safe place somewhere where you enable that sigil to work its magic. I believe that the magic that's in a sigil comes not only from creating the sigil, but it also comes from the way that you use the sigil. For instance, after you create the sigil, you could place it underneath a candle. And what that would do is allow that candle to act as a force or a catalyst that takes the energy from the sigil and releases it into the universe. Something that I like to do with sigils is burn them, because once I've created a spell and I've cast the magic, then I have no need or no desire to keep thinking about it. I want to destroy that sigil in different ways so that the spell is cast and the act is done. What I like to do is I like to burn it in a fire, because I find that burning that sigil on that piece of paper in a fire is a great way to tap into that element of fire, which tends to create as it destroys. And through the smoke and the ash and everything, it puts that sigil into a whole new element. It brings it closer to the ether. It releases it in a magical way. Another thing I like to discuss is the difference between sigils that have already been created and are popularly known versus ones that you create for yourself.